This is Brütal Legend, and it's worth talking about now because it's old enough that you, an indie dev, could probably make something very similar to Brütal Legend. The assets are no longer, AAA quality assets, and that's the fun of looking at these old games. You can learn a lot from them and do similar things, so let's learn a lot. First things first, Brütal Legend, music is the best part, and I can't talk about music because YouTube will rip out my guts and lay spider eggs in my eye sockets, so we're going to go ahead and skip that part. But we are going to talk about the concept design. This is a heavy metal dream world, and I mean that in a literal sense. It is a world of heavy metal, and every asset, most assets in the game, are built around this heavy metal theme to an extent which is absurd but also perfect. So, like, the trees are almost never trees. They're usually spears or made out of heavy metal wings or any of a number of other things. And the rock outcroppings are not simply rock outcroppings. They're the bones of the ancient gods of heavy metal, and their heart is still beating. That's pretty dang cool, right? I really, really like these ideas, and these are strong concepts. All of these assets fit the same profile as a normal asset. The trees might be made out of spears or spikes or transmission towers, but they are still tree-shaped. The rock outcroppings might be made out of bones, but they're still rock outcropping shaped. And that means that you can design your game world with the same fundamental approach that you would using normal assets. And that's something that you should consider. If you are building your own assets, you're modeling your own assets, they should be assets that you wouldn't ever find anywhere else. Otherwise, why are you building them? Just buy them. So when you're building your assets, try and find ways to make your assets incredibly unique and distinct and fit into your world's theme. If you can't, then rethink your world's theme until you can. Because if your world isn't distinct enough for people to say, hey, wait, that looks cool, then guess what? No one's going to say, hey, wait, this looks cool. You want your game to be distinct and powerful, and a big part of that is making sure that everyday ordinary objects are really interesting and fun to look at. So that's really what I want you to take away from Brütal Legend. You should not be making generic games. There's no point. No one will remember your generic game. But there are things that I want you to take away from Brütal Legend as cautionary tales. Now, obviously, I'm talking about people who have made some of the best games ever, like Psychonauts. So when I say, oh, this part sucks and this part sucks, you can go ahead and take that with as many bags of salt as you'd like. But I think that I am probably on the side of reason here, because this game is largely forgotten for the reasons that we're going to talk about. One of those reasons is gameplay. A lot of the gameplay is very weak and confused. So, we're not going to really go into detail there, but you want to make sure your gameplay is actually fun. But another thing is that the world design is really anemic. For example, this highway, I'm driving down it, but there's nothing here for me to get interested by or to do. I'm in a shallow valley, but that only works if there's something that we're leading to, or something interesting to see, or some reason to be here. If it's just going to lead me straight, I'm just going to follow it straight. So where am I going? Let's find out where I'm going. There's got to be something up here, right? I mean, look at this really cool road leading somewhere. And continuing to lead somewhere. There's got to be something at the end of it, because that's the whole point of roads, right? To lead people to the part of the open world where there's cool stuff. Ooh, it's an edge. If I jump off the edge, what's going to happen? Oh, I'll die. This road literally leads nowhere. That's interesting design. Now, it could be that maybe the road gets repaired sometime later in the game, but I don't think so. I think it just is broken forever. What's worse is that there's no pulls off to the side at any point. I'm not really seeing that I should be going anywhere or doing anything. In a game like Fallout, they would have like a raider den perched overhead, like built off the side of this outcropping, and give me something to see and something to do. And when I kill off the raider den, I'll be climbing to a higher point, and I'll be able to see even more. That sort of thing works really well. But this road is so badly designed that I'm currently driving past the most iconic thing in this entire level, and I can't even see it. There you are. That's the most iconic thing in this part of the world. It's right next to the main overhang thoroughfare, and you can't even see it. And I'd like to pretend that this is the only really bad spot, but this is just the most egregiously noticeable one. In fact, the entire level design is pretty anemic, and that's mostly due to it not leading anywhere. And as I've said before, the whole point of open world levels is that you don't fill them with stuff. You make sure to draw the player to the stuff. So the whole idea of a road like this is that it goes to where there is stuff. But guess what? This road does not go to where there is stuff. This road just kind of goes. All of the roads just go in a big circuit. They don't go to any assets. They just wander around in loops. And that's not good enough. Similarly, there should never be a point where you can't feel what you should do. You should always be like, there's something cool, or there is a clear road to follow. The only place I see to go is that way, and there's nothing over there. It doesn't look at all interesting or draws my attention in the slightest. That is bad design. Now, I can't say that this is like a surprise. This was a long time ago. We probably hadn't really codified the concepts that we normally use in today's games. But you can see how a lot of the assets are almost what you would expect. Like there's shallow valleys leading around, and there's things to pull the eye. Like, oh, look at this. There's something cool over here. Because there's an overhang. And this is actually cool. This overhang is actually like a pit stop with a bunch of overhang lights, and it's awesome, right? But where does it go? Where does it lead? There's no more stuff to do. There's no clusters of assets. It's just random assets polka dotted around the game world. It is not good enough. These days, you're going to find that what most people do when they create open worlds is they create packs of assets. They create like zones of interesting things to do, and then they will have those hubs as individual elements in a world. And that way, when you that was not what I wanted. Oh well. That way, what happens is when you go out into the world, you'll drive for a while, and then you'll discover a bunch of small, cool things. This predates that. This is what you see when you ask a newbie to build their world, because what they do is they put together a world, but the world is just a sectored off area. So it's like, oh yeah, here's the green part, and then here's the forest part, and then here's the swamp part, and then here's the desert part, and then here's the whatever mountain part. So these are how you see it when you ask someone to build a world, but they don't have any sort of strong connections to it. The world is far too large for the kinds of assets you can see. Normally what you'd see is you'd compress these together rather considerably, and then you'd put barriers between them. For example, this barrier here is a pretty substantial one, this raised highway. It would be very possible to have a very sharp difference. You could just go straight from one biome to the other. But instead they've softened the biome change in an effort to feel realistic, I guess, and it doesn't really work. Now, some of this is because you're on a car, and on a car, travel times are a little bit different, and obstacles are a little bit different. But the basic idea here is they've got a lot of world, and then what they did is they just randomly plopped stuff down into it. So, if I adventure over here, I'm not going to find a whole bunch of stuff to do. I'm going to find like one thing here, 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 one thing here. Nothing clustered, nothing that goes and chains from one to the next. And I'm not going to be able to see where the cool things in this world are because they haven't set them up so that I have a good set of things to see. The most eye-catching parts of this world are literally nothing. This giant rock guitar coming out of the ground, it's nothing. There's nothing near it. There's nothing to do with it. It's just a cool thing that they thought would look cool, so they plonked it down, and there is nothing here. It draws you from a mile away, and it's nothing. Now, this is partly fixed by the fact that they have these giant spotlights beaming down on your mission target, but that's not open world design. That's like mission-to-mission design. That's linear design. So there's no real reason that should be the primary thing making my navs easier. I should have a fun time navigating this world even if I'm not on the main mission. And guess what? None of the iconic imagery is used to help guide the player through this open world to fun things to do. The fun things to do are scattered randomly and without any sort of attention to detail in the slightest. Where am I supposed to go? What's next? Is there anything worth doing? Well, that looks cool, but you know what it is? It is just a car lot. There's nothing there aside from fixing my car. So I'll go over here because there's a cool smoke going up in the sky, right? This is obviously where I'm supposed to go, but we've already been here. This is the other really cool, iconic thing that doesn't go anywhere. It's the outcropping again. So this world is not designed to cause the player to flow into the assets that would actually be fun to play with. It just goes around at random, and that's not good enough. So if you wanted to see how not to design an open world level, this is how you don't design them. Oh, this is so egregious. This thing here is the worst. It's such an incredible thing to see, but it can only be seen from this one angle, and there's nothing nearby, and the main thoroughfare, actually, you can't see it from the main thoroughfare. Wow. I don't know how they made these mistakes. I guess they probably just didn't really understand how open worlds were going to work. They were a very linear-centric game studio. I think that was more like Psychonauts style stuff happening there. Even Psychonauts had some strange world design. Maybe I'll talk about that someday. Anyway, that's Brütal Legend for you. If you have any interest in music and in games, play it. It's got a lot of really cool music. Oh, I wanted to talk about enemy design. All of the enemies in Brütal Legend are also themed around heavy metal. From the heavy metal porcupines to the spiders, which are actually, they spin bass strings. And I think that that's wonderful. It all has a really iconic look to it, unlike in most other games where you just get a bat or a dragon. These are all recognizably iconic heavy metal elements. For example, the stag, which you can ride, is a heavy metal stag. I think that's pretty cool. All right, that's it. Have fun.